to be Jean-Paul Sartre. And then that great Buddhist master had the final mitigating thing, which was doobie doobie doobie, Frank Sinatra.
Very good.
All right, see, we're all strangers in the night here.
And doing it our way.
Don't stop. All right, we've got a very short time for questions, so I'm going to ask whatever questions they are, be really, really brief. And we've got mics on either side of the house. Who would like to be first? All right, okay, nobody. Right. Oh, somebody in the front row. That's nice. And somebody almost in the back row. So if you'd like to have, that'd be great. Thank you. Please.
Yeah, when Mr. Siegel spoke about the who am I, and he said there is something that never changes there, and that for me was very important. But then my own questions always go back again. Is that still individual, or that just is undefined, and therefore you can call it individual?
Oh, what a wonderful question.
No, I think
My
because
experience...
you knew Siegel better than I did. So, what would he would have said? I mean,
I'm not sure what he would have said, and I wouldn't want to pretend. I just realized that I was struck watching the film again and listening to him, how universal that question is, and it raised for me questions of whether we can do this alone, whether we require the formality, the structure, the forms of religion or some sort of organized search. How is it that we keep alive that weak voice in the back? It does come down always to who am I, it seems to be, but I really wanted to know whether you thought that this could be done alone, or whether we're required to configure ourselves with other people so disposed that are pursuing the question, who am I?
In Buddhism, we actually speak about 3 different approaches to self-realization. We have 2 different, what we call, 2 different kinds of solitary searches of truth and self-realization. One is called the Shavaka, meaning hearers, and the other one is called Pachika Buddha, which means solitary realizer. And then the third one is called the Bodhisattva. Now, from Buddhist point of view, any kind of search that we embark on is going to be an individual one. Of course, we need outside help and so on. But according to Buddhism, we do not have this notion of a creator, God, or something like that. And whatever help we are going to get it from other human beings. Perhaps they're a little bit more advanced than us or something of that nature, but still they're human beings. But they cannot do anything for you unless you yourself are willing and able to do something about yourself and take on that journey. So you can take, as I mentioned. So the first one is, you mix with people, but you stick to yourself, and usually you just concentrate on listening to other people talk about spiritual things. That's why they're called this hearers, Shavakas. Nyen te in Tibetan. Nyen te, nyen means to listen, te means to hear. So nyen te or Shavaka is somebody who listens to other people talking about different things, people who should know more than you yourself do, kind of thing. And then putting that to practice. And the second one is called Pachika Buddha, the solitary realizer, who actually doesn't looking for a teacher or anything, her own mind to find out where everything is at. So it is said that somebody might stumble across a piece of human bone, and then they say, where does this come from? It comes from death. And where does death come from? From birth. And where does birth come from? From craving, desire. And where does craving, desire come from? From ignorance, etc. And so through this kind of analytical work, they come to realize something about the human condition and our existential condition. And then you've got the bodhisattva one, where you actually need to work with others and so forth. So you find yourself from and through working with others, so that you find yourself by being with others. Mahayana perspective. So we have these two perspectives. They're called the Hinayana perspective and the Mahayana perspective. The previous two represent the Hinayana perspective, and the last one represents the Mahayana perspective. But even in the Mahayana perspective, it's still an individual journey. It's how you are interacting with others that matters most. It's not what they're doing which matters in relation to your well-being or your welfare. Your welfare, your well-being is treating others and other people. Even
which is, as the subtitle will tell you, Buddhism-inspired contemporary art. That doesn't mean that the artists are Buddhists, but they come from different cultures and explore the seminal ideas that are central to Buddhist philosophy, the notion of emptiness. Now, if you don't know what that is, the chances are, and we're hoping at least, that by the end of the evening you will. That's the point of this series. And I'm just thrilled that we have two pioneers in conversation this evening. One was a pioneer in bringing the teachings of Tibetan Buddhism to Australia, Traleg Rinpoche, and the other, Ken Burns, is a pioneer in that he's allowed us to view way. And so with those two different ways of viewing the world, we, I think, can explore nothingness with a very fresh approach this evening. Now, the format is a little bit different from what we normally do, because we're going to screen two short films by Ken Burns of the philosopher and artist William Siegel. And so I'm not going to say very much about that, but it will provide the beginnings and the material by which Traleg Rinpoche and Ken Burns will have a conversation on emptiness and Buddhist philosophy. So I'm really, truly delighted and honored to be able to welcome Ken Burns to the Rubin Museum of Art. It's his debut. So welcome, Ken, and we really look forward to seeing your two films, and I hope you'll talk a little bit about them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening. I just wanted to say at the outset how grateful I am to the Rubin Museum of Art and to Mr. Rubin, but particularly also to Marielle Banku Siegel, William Siegel's widow and my dear friend, and Cynthia Reeves for me personally making this evening possible. And I'm very, very grateful that they're all here and that we could have a chance to be together this evening. I am showing two films of a trilogy that I made over 10 years' time on William Siegel. I had met William Siegel in the early 1970s as a teacher and student in the Gurdjieff studies, and later on had the great good fortune to become friends with him and his wife during the last 10 years of his life, during which time, in the midst of producing a number of films on our American history, I had the opportunity also to make 3 short films about William Siegel. To many people, they seem entirely incongruous from the rest of my body of work. In fact, I think that many of the same themes that inform these simple films also are engaged in our larger, more complicated, more intricate, perhaps more distracting films on American history. And I find some similarities there, and many of you who perhaps are familiar with my work might find that in that case here. In 1992, after getting to know the Siegels personally very well for about 3 years, I should back up and say in 1989, he had an exhibition of paintings. I had no idea that he was a painter. His wife had discovered up in an attic many of his paintings and had discovered herself that he had spent a long part of his life painting as an avocation, not a profession. And they were very, very interesting and seemed to be a window through which we could also help to understand his philosophy. In 1992, there was an exhibition planned in Tokyo, and Mrs. Siegel asked if I might produce a short film that might accompany the exhibition to help introduce Mr. Siegel to an Eastern Asian audience. And the result is the first film you're going to see, in which I think it is not so much the paintings, but a good deal of the underlying philosophy that informed William Siegel's life that comes through. And so I'd like to first show that film, and then come up and introduce, if I might very briefly again, the second film in the trilogy, and then we'll have an opportunity to have a conversation, and then hopefully there'll be some time at the end of the evening where we might entertain some responses or questions from you. So if we could show the first film, it's 13 minutes long. Thank you. Discovered. He was born in 1905 in Jim Crow South, Macon, Georgia, and died in the spring of 2000 as the cherry blossoms were starting to come out. He lived an extraordinarily full and rich life, and after this film came out, we spoke many times about it, and I had the great privilege of spending, as I said before, a lot of time with him and his wife over dinner. I had originally finished the first film, as you saw, without any sort of credit or copyright, and just assumed that it would go out in the world and people could appropriate it and claim that they'd made it, and that would be all right. And that would certainly be in the spirit of William Siegel's relationship, not just to the art, but to so many other things. And I remember one dinner he said, "Why didn't you put your name on the film? Why didn't you copyright it? That's ridiculous." And but beyond that admonition, we also spent a lot of time realizing that what had taken place in the collaboration was something that we wanted to continue, and we weren't quite sure how we were going to do it. Didn't know that it would eventually become a trilogy. But one year in 1995, I happened to be visiting Paris, where he and Marielle spent some part of the year, and it was a very cold January when they asked me if I would like to get up early on a Sunday morning and accompany them 3 hours to Vézelay, a beautiful basilica cathedral south of France, in the middle of central France, south of Paris. And we went there on this cold day to this extraordinary cathedral that had not yet experienced all the diminution that occurs in the great tourist attractions of Paris. What's happened to Chartres, what's happened to Notre Dame and Saint-Denis, as all of the inattention of centuries of tourism have kind of eroded the original intent. And Vézelay seemed very much alive with its original purpose. And as we toured that day, we began to